Welcome to TEDxYouth at McKinley Park. My name is Ashley Jen, and I am the organizer of this event. If you would have told me over a year ago that this project in the works that came from a random idea would have come to life, I would have never believed you. I'd like to just thank everybody who has helped this project to come to where it is now, because I would have never been able to do this without my team, the constant support that I felt, and everyone who's been there along the way. To provide a little bit of backstory for those who may not have been a part of this project, it all started in a biology lecture, and for me as a student, if you've ever met me, know that I take constant notes. But for some reason, this one time we were learning about Alberta, Canada, and the oil spills there, I didn't feel like taking notes. I started thinking about a TEDx video that we were watching and thinking of who actually gives these talks. Could I give a talk? What about my brother? And that's where I stopped. Because for me, my brother had always been the biggest influence of my life. He's actually where this all starts. Because for me, coming to Sacramento was never our family's choice. My brother Edison was diagnosed with autism and other mental disabilities at the age of 2. And because of that, during his developmental ages, we needed to provide him more services than we could have actually had access to had we been where we used to live. Sacramento being the capital of California, the amount of diversity that we found was just awesome. In clear words that Edison would have said, it really just came to life as it was. We were embraced, not just for being a family with someone with mental disabilities, but for being Korean Americans. And while that may not be as shocking for those who live in Sacramento, or maybe those abroad who are seeing this, it was something that I never felt welcome to. I always stood out as being someone of color, but also just not feeling like I was ever meant to be there. Here, we were welcomed, we were told to be ourselves, and that's where I really flourished and got to know myself. And with that, I met some incredible people along the way. So the point of this event, and maybe the reason for why I've become who I am, is this idea of self-representation. I've gathered a collection of speakers for you all to hear, and I couldn't be more proud of them for what they're sharing, because it's their firsthand experiences and the things that they've learned along the way that they want to share with other people. So much of what we hear comes from conflict and misunderstandings. And so what we want to do is to have people share their experiences and getting that firsthand experience so that the educational process can start. It doesn't have to be confrontational. It doesn't have to be something that's harsh or aggressive, but just open and having that conversation to start with. And that's what's important. With that, we're going to be going to our first speaker, Whitney Barnett, a girl with half a heart, but just as much love to give to anyone else.
Hello, my name is Whitney Barnett. I'm 18 years old and I was born with half a heart. Yes, really, I was born with a medical condition called congenital heart disease, or CHD. And today I want to talk about how this condition actually really positively affected my life. So CHD affects 1 in 100 infants, and it presents itself as a range of different heart defects ranging from child to child. So my specific heart defect is called tricuspid atresia, which means that instead of having a tricuspid valve, I have just a wall of tissue between my right atrium and my right ventricle. As you could assume, this presented further anatomical defects, and I was actually additionally born with pulmonary stenosis, hypoplastic right heart syndrome, an atrial septal defect, and a ventricular septal defect. What all of this means basically is that my heart was severely underdeveloped, had a few holes, and yes, I was a blue baby. I had 3 open heart surgeries before the time I turned 3 to restructure my blood flow to accommodate my heart, and I have now what's called a single ventricle heart. So now that we're done with this boring anatomy lesson, I want to talk about my personal experience with CHD, but also teach you about some of the lessons I learned along the way. So summer camp has always been a huge part of my life. From ages 7 to 17, I spent practically my entire summers at camps. But my favorite and the most significant is a little bit different than the rest. Camp Taylor is an overnight summer camp for kids specifically for congenital heart defects. To a 7-year-old who's never met anyone who's like her before in the world, this is pretty much the most exciting thing ever, and it still is to me today. Camp Taylor draws in campers from all across California and even from different states. I attended for 10 years until I aged out just this past year, and it's staffed with the most amazing counselors, teen mentors, cardiac nurses, and doctors. I now serve as a mentor, which means I not only get to represent this amazing organization and spread awareness about CHD, but I also get to work with these spectacular kids who attend the camp. So I'm not just telling you about this because I want to brag about how awesome my summer camp is, because trust me, I want to do that. But I'm telling you about this because Camp Taylor played such a pivotal role in my childhood as someone growing up with CHD, and it's going to be the center of a lot of my stories today. So at Camp Taylor, one of the things they teach us about is the importance of self-advocacy, which is what I want to focus on. It took me years to even begin to grasp what it means to be an advocate for yourself. And it's because I didn't really care and I didn't put the effort in until recently. Quite honestly, if we go back 18 months, I would not be standing here talking to you today, not because I didn't have the courage, but because I didn't have the self-respect. To me, self-advocacy means loving and respecting yourself to the point where you know that it's okay to be you, but you're also willing to share that with others. The way that I see it, self-advocacy can be boiled down into 3 main topics. So the first one I want to talk about is how to stand up for yourself. This can be really hard when you're young and insecure, but it's so important still. Confrontation can seem embarrassing and unnecessary when you're unsure of yourself, like I was for so many years. When I was younger, I thought it was a burden to have to tell substitute PE teachers and volleyball coach clinics, hey, I need to sit out on running the mile, it's for medical reasons. But obviously, it's the right thing to do, so I sucked it up and did it. Granted, it was way easier for me to stand up for my health than it was for me to stand up for myself and my well-being. CHD is what we consider an invisible disability, and this is because it affects one's internal anatomy, but also because healthy patients like myself, upon first glance, look like there's, quote, nothing wrong with them. What's not so invisible, however, are the gnarly zipper scars that I have running down my chest and across my back. And they're especially not invisible to the always curious, wandering eyes of elementary school students. The thing is, before going to school, I wasn't insecure at all. My parents had raised me to be proud of myself, and I really liked my scar. But once I got to school, the question started circulating. What is that? Why do you have that? You know, it's a really easy question. I would answer, oh, I had surgery on my heart. It's a scar. Simple, right? So I thought. It was the responses that really got to me. Oh, what? Ew, that is so weird. That's so gross. You know, elementary schoolers have no filter. They say whatever they think. And I didn't take it well at all. I let it go straight to my head, and I actually became super self-conscious about it. Retrospectively, I can say that I did not handle it the way that I should have. What I ended up doing is coming up with a cover story. And I'm not saying that you should lie, but it does make for a pretty funny story between me and my friends to this day. What I would say when someone asked about my scars, I would say, oh, it's a shark bite. You know, I was swimming in the ocean. I got attacked by a shark. And it made me sound pretty cool, but it was obviously a lie. What I should have said instead is, hey, that was kind of rude. This is my scar. It makes me who I am. But I was 5. I didn't have any social skills, and I didn't know how to stand up for myself. Knowing how to stand up for yourself is not only important to build your own self-confidence, but it's important because then you're showing other people that you are confident and you are proud of yourself. And it's not easy or in any way a simple process, but it can get easier through the help of reaching out for friends and family, but also just giving yourself daily positive affirmations. So the second thing I want to talk about is educating yourself and others. One of my favorite activities that we have at Camp Taylor is called Heart Education. And it's where we go and we sit with the main cardiologist of the camp, and he gives every single camper an individualized packet with a diagram of what their heart looked like when they were born, what it looks like now, and then a diagram of a normal heart to compare it to. And that's where I got my visuals from the beginning of this speech. There's also cardiac nurses and doctors available to answer any questions about procedures, side effects, what's in the future, anything you want. And since I've been going to camp for as long as I have, my heart hasn't changed in virtually 13 years, and I am the total nerd that I am. I've spent the last 10 years trying to learn everything possible about my heart. I've always prided myself on my somewhat extensive knowledge of not only my CHD, but also those of my friends. But that's not enough. To me, self-advocacy means being able and willing to share this information with others and not just keep it to yourself. As I've learned throughout the years, and as you probably discovered at the beginning of this speech, me talking about the anatomy of my heart is honestly boring and confusing, and no one wants to hear that. Because when it comes down to it, my friends don't care about what my heart looks like inside my body. They care about what it means for me in my life. So what I've done is use metaphors to explain how my CHD affects my life. One common side effect of having CHD is having chronic fatigue to some extent. And at Camp Taylor, they taught us a really cool way to explain chronic fatigue through metaphors. And that is called the spoon theory. So the spoon theory says that the energy level of a given person on a given day can be represented by 10 spoons. However, in a person with CHD, they only have 9 spoons to start out with. As you go throughout the day and you do different activities, the different activities take up different amounts of spoons, leaving you with however many spoons are at the end of the day. More strenuous activities obviously take more spoons, so on and so forth. So let's have an example. Let's use the activity of waking up, eating breakfast, getting ready for the day. Super simple, super low energy. Everybody does it every day. Let's see how it affects the different people. So in a person with a normal heart, this is going to take half a spoon, leaving 9.5 spoons left for the rest of the day. However, in a person with CHD, this is going to take a full spoon, leaving only 8 spoons for the rest of the day. And as the day goes on, every single activity, it takes double the amount of spoons in a person with CHD than it does in a person with a normal heart. And it really adds up because by the end of the day, the person with CHD has way less spoons. So now that I have this easy to explain, easy to understand metaphor to explain how CHD affects my life in one way, it's really easy for me to show my friends and family. It's a way for me to show my friends that when I say I don't want to go out, I'm not always just being lame. But between you and me, sometimes I am just being lame. So educating yourself and others is a great way to not only build confidence, but it's also a great way to show others that you're confident. Going back to what I said, when you're standing up for yourself. So the last step that I want to talk about is self-love and self-acceptance. This was for me by far the most difficult while simultaneously the most significant step. It's taken me 13 years to get to where I am today, and I'm still nowhere near done with my journey. I want to share some of my personal experiences, but also make it applicable because I think that this is a really important phase of life that everyone should go through, no matter who you are. So remember when I said that kids in elementary school would tease me about my scars? Well, this was the beginning of an excruciatingly long road of being self-conscious and self-insecure. I told my mom that I wanted to stop buying clothes that would show my scar, no more low necklines. And so we did for 13 years. Just this past summer, I bought my very first V-neck dress, and it was a huge thing for me, even though it seems insignificant. It was a really big step in my road to self-confidence. So you're probably thinking, why is she telling us about this dress? How is this relevant? Let's go back in time a little so I can tell you about how I got here. So aside from feeling self-conscious about my CHD when I was in elementary school, in middle school, I began to feel self-conscious among my friends at Camp Taylor about the severity or lack thereof of my CHD. At Camp Taylor, we have this activity called Giving Tree, where we sit down every night with our cabin and we talk about our CHD and how it affects our lives. We share stories, we ask questions. It's always very emotional and everyone ends up in tears. Amazing bonding strategy, by the way. As I grew older, though, I realized that I began to invalidate myself because I felt sad watching my friends who had had their entire lives flipped upside down by this horrible disease, while I was fortunate enough to have all of my surgeries done before a time I could remember, and I've been healthy ever since. I convinced myself that because I wasn't forced to look at my CHD in the eyes every single day and face it, that it was insignificant to my identity. So I suppressed all my feelings about it. Obviously, this is a horrible idea because it just led to further frustration and confusion. And it wasn't until recently, really recently, in fact, that I realized my CHD is so much more than that. 2 years ago, if you would have asked me to rate on a scale of 1 to 10 how much my CHD affects me, I would have said 1, maybe 2. I would have replied, well, I take a baby aspirin every morning, I don't play sports, and sure, I get a little winded walking up the stairs, but let's be honest, who doesn't? But recently I realized that my CHD has affected almost every aspect of my life, from my positive outlook on life to my drive and ambition to my love of school. It's so much more than a daily pill, some trips to the cardiologist, and some scars. Something clicked. I'm not sure what it was to this day, but I had a Mitchie from Camp Rock moment, and I said, this is me. I began to talk more with my friends about it, and I began to embrace and be conscious of the part of me that makes me unique. And I gained so much confidence, both mentally and physically. And I mean, hey, I even bought that dress that I was talking about. So now I want to share with you 3 basic lessons that I've learned on my journey of self-love. I am in no way an expert, so take this with kind of a grain of salt. But I just want to share with you what I learned. So the first thing is reach out for help. Yes, this is all about individuality, and only you will ever be able to know if you truly love yourself. But that doesn't mean you can't phone a friend. My friends from Camp Taylor and outside have helped me get to where I am today, and I would be nowhere near this without them. Number 2 is be patient. This is not something that happens overnight or in a month or even a year. This is a journey, an excursion. It's a process. You're going to face roadblocks, probably a lot of them, but that's okay because you're strong, and if you concentrate on your goal, you can accomplish anything. And number 3 is you are your own person. This is so cliche, but do not compare yourself to others. Take it from me, it will lead you down the wrong path. It'll just complicate things for you further. In the end, self-advocacy is important because you need to love yourself and accept yourself. You advocate for yourself not because no one else will, but because you do it best. Thank you for allowing me to share my story, and I hope you take this as an opportunity to begin your journey of self-love. Thank you.
Doesn't that just pull at your heartstrings? Thank you, Whitney, for sharing your story. And now we'll be going to our next speaker, Eleanor Love, who's going to be telling us about the importance of youth advocacy and being your own representation, regardless of age.
Whenever I see or hear a speech calling for youth to rise, it's almost always from some sort of faraway figure. It comes from celebrities, from politicians, from world leaders, even from middle-aged adults. They call for youth to be engaged and represented. They call for them to vote and be involved. And while their words can often be inspiring, they're almost always abstract. So today, I'm here to talk to you, eye to eye, friend to friend, classmate to classmate, student to student, about the power we possess as young people in our community and beyond. Young people hold extraordinary power in our democracy, and we've seen this power in action this summer in the recent Black Lives Matter protests. We are on the front lines in the fights for gender equality, for immigrant rights, for LGBTQ rights, for environmental policies. We have undeniable and unstoppable potential and strength. We respond the most when our rights and our well-being is in danger. My first step into the world of civic engagement and activism came after the current administration threatened the rights of immigrants in DACA in 2016. I'm from China. I was adopted from there as a very small child. And as an adoptee, I was really scared. I was scared that I'd be sent back to China. I knew I had to do something about that fear. So I joined my local youth commission in hopes of making a difference. Young people across the country face student debt, the effects of climate change, a crashing economy, and unemployment rates. And a lot of them had felt the same threat and fear that I once did. That fear and anger that we feel has galvanized thousands of young people across the country into action. So we protest, we volunteer, we post on social media, but where we fall short is voting. Young people are underrepresented in every single election. Every single election. But what does this underrepresentation really look like? Let's take a look at the 2016 general election. So before I move on to this, I just want you to take a guess at the percentage of young people who showed up to vote in 2016. Got that number in your head? Only a little bit more than 16% of young people showed up to vote. Only a little bit more than 16% of young voters aged 18 to 24 years old actually came to the polls in 2016. That's crazy. 16%. To put this into perspective, when you look at the turnout rate of older voters aged 65 and up, they came out at nearly 71%. 16 versus 71%. That is an incredible disparity. Okay. So if you're a politician, and I just want you to imagine that you're a politician for a minute, and you're really in desperate need of some votes, whose needs are you going to cater towards first? Which group are you going to try and appeal to? Because it won't be the young people. And this is what turns into this never-ending cycle. Young people don't show up to vote, and older people do. And so, as a result, politicians' campaigns largely are centered around the issues that matter most to older people. And then young voters feel overlooked and invisible and frustrated, and then they don't vote again, and they don't vote again, and again, and again. But what if we broke that chain? In 2018, we saw a small glimpse at what politics in America could look like if young people actually showed up to vote more. In 2018, young voters across the country shattered records and made history. We elected one of the most diverse group of politicians in history. Arizona and Tennessee sent its first female senators to Washington. Massachusetts and Connecticut elected its first ever black women to Congress. Young people also voted to elect the first Muslim members of Congress, and we elected Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the youngest woman ever to hold a spot in Congress at 29 years old. So, how did we make this happen? It's not rocket science. More young people showed up to vote. In 2018, 36% of voters aged 18 to 29 showed up to the polls. But when you look a little closer and break down the age groups a little more, the youngest voters aged 18 to 21 only showed up at about 4%. We're barely exercising the youth electorate, and we still made history in 2018. Imagine what we could do if we exercised our entire potential. If turnout rate was 50%, if it was 75%. We make change together, and we make change in numbers. But we still have a ton of work to do. We are the sleeping giant in the 2020 election and elections to come. But to make history, to break those same records, we must all vote. And even so, I'm standing here talking to you, and I'm barely 16. It's easy to feel left out of the political process if you're a minor. You can't vote, and our representation is left up to our parents who decide our elected officials. But even we, as minors, carry massive political weight. With the rise in activism over the summer, I've seen a lot of my friends and colleagues become more involved and interested in educating themselves. I see people sharing infographic posts on social media. I see people signing and spreading petitions. I see people posting about their thoughts on politics and their thoughts on current events. I am endlessly proud and excited that people are wanting to learn and are wanting to become involved. It gives me hope to see people speak out who I normally wouldn't have imagined. And it used to be much less common for myself and my friends to even share our opinions out of fear of looking overly opinionated or even too nerdy. The events of this summer, between the global pandemic, the Black Lives Matter protests, the economy, unemployment, and so much more that's been thrown at us, has sparked a unique type of outrage among young people. And every day I find that new people are becoming involved. But this is my ask to my friends and my fellow teenagers. Please do not limit your activism to just social media. It is not enough to just post. It is not enough to just share a few links. It is not enough to just sign a few petitions. We have the power to educate ourselves and those around us, and our influence on relatives and family and older siblings and even our parents could be the determining factor in whether they vote or not. We can become involved in community youth groups, like local youth commissions, many of which inform government officials on the issues that matter most to us. We can volunteer in campaigns at the community, state, and national level. We can show up to city council meetings, school board meetings, county board meetings, and make public comment. In California and 13 other states, 16 and 17-year-olds can pre-register to vote. And while that does not change the voting age, it still allows us to be the most prepared and more likely to go through with voting when the time actually comes. We can volunteer with nonprofit organizations like Rock the Vote, which is literally dedicated to building the political strength of young people. This November, we can volunteer as student poll workers. I've signed up, a lot of my friends have too, and we're super excited. This work, this involvement, this energy translates into political power. Not just political power for its own sake, but political power as a means to achieve the change we think we need to see in this country. When we all protest, when we all show up at city council meetings, when we all pre-register, when we all vote, when we all do everything we can possibly do, we create real momentum, a type of momentum that cannot be stopped. We must be willing to wield the power we have together. We must be willing to fight for our future, for our planet, for each other, for our rights. Change is no longer coming, it is here. And we still have so much work to do. But we must be on the front lines together. Thank you.
Don't you just love that? Thank you, Eleanor, for your empowering words. Now we'll be going to Kai Lam, and she's going to be talking to us about what it's like to connect with others without fully understanding what they're going through, but still being there.
There are some people who could hear you speak 1,000 words and still not understand you. There are others who will understand you without you even speaking a word. Hi, my name is Kai Lam, and I'll be talking about 3 different stories of mine that all relate in a way you may not expect but were inspired from this quote. It really stands out to me, and I think you might understand by the end of this talk. With that, I'd like to get on with my first story. This is about my sister and I finding our way through age differences. My older sister, Avia, is 13 years older than me. So when I was born, she was already 13. She loved to spend time with me, babysitted me when our mom was at work, but there are definitely differences of what our interests were. I loved to run into walls with a bucket on my head, while she liked to go to the mall with her friends. But there is one thing that we both loved to do together. We would rock out and dance to Led Zeppelin music and wear black lipstick. I remember the dancing so vividly, it feels like yesterday. The point of that story is that even though we had different interests and our ages were so far apart, we were able to find that connection that brought us together. I still dance to this day because it helps me when I feel lost. Looking back at those memories reminds me that even if you don't have similarities with someone, you can still connect with them. Over the summer, my family and I attended a Black Lives Matter protest. It was in UC Davis, California, and it amazed me that there were not only Black people protesting for their equal rights, but there were different ethnicities standing together because the demand was for equality for all, and that they would no longer stand for such injustice. I thought that was incredible, to see not only Black people standing up for their culture, but also seeing other races supporting us. The Black culture is judged a lot, in my opinion. This world is full of hate sometimes, and if everyone could just spread a little more kindness, we could all be a big community. Another example that showed me, even with our differences of not being the same color, culture, beliefs, and respects, we can all come together to support a targeted race is because that impacts and impedes equality for humanity. This last story is my personal favorite. I was adopted right away at birth by a loving family. I couldn't ask for a more supportive family, especially my mom. She's like Superwoman. who's strong emotionally, physically, and mentally. She's been through a lot, to the point where most people would have given up, but every morning she gets up and takes care of her kids and family. I used to always worry that my sister was my mom's favorite kid, and I struggled with overcoming that for a long time. I felt out of place because I'm not only the only black one in my family, but I'm also the only adopted one. I didn't always want to talk to my mom about this, so I talked to my 16-year-old cousin Christian about it. He's the most amazing cousin ever. I couldn't ask for a better one. He may not always understand what I'm going through. He tries to, though. He makes sure I'm okay, and I have a lot of respect for him. He's basically the older brother I've always wanted. We both treat each other with a lot of respect, and we have a good time when we hang out. We may not always understand fully what the other one is going through, but the point is that we're there for each other. It's easier than talking to one of my friends because he's family, and we can talk about family matters as well. The point of all three of my stories is that you may not always be able to understand what someone is going through, or be able to relate to them at all. Maybe you guys come from totally separate worlds. But the point is you can usually still have some sort of connection and respect for them. So many of our world's problems and misunderstandings come from a lack of listening to other people's stories and having the basic respect to hear them out. Only when we come to meet others where they're at and are accepted to the points we are, do we form bridges of understandings that help us grow together even stronger with our differences. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Kai, for your wonderful words about how we can connect with our community. Our next speaker is Jasmine Lewis-Bowles, who's going to be telling us about how change is inevitable, but it doesn't have to be as scary as we think it is.
Do you know the worst thing to get in your hair? Frosting. My friends and I got frosting in our hair one time, and it took me 2 weeks to get it out. It was so hard to do because most of the time when you can get frosting out of your hair. For those of you who hadn't this experience before, it was a pain in the butt to get out, but since it was with my friends and on my birthday, it was so much fun. This was one of the first experience I've had with a social group called Epic, located here in Sacramento, and I couldn't be more thankful for them. All of my Epic friends feel like a part of my family, and I couldn't be better without them. Hi, my name is Jasmine Lewis-Bowles. I am 17, going to be 18 when this goes up. What I am going to be talking about today is how growing up and becoming an adult don't have to be as scary as being to be set free into the world. We have cherished the people we have around us, and knowing that change doesn't have to be a negative thing. There are always new ways to experience the common connections we have with other. Right now is a very transitional period in my life, and I wanted to share 2 very difficult experiences about how my life is changed. It is comparing a large and small experience, but regardless of how they seem, it is a change that I am welcoming to see. A large part of my life that is changed has to do with Epic. This is where I got frosting in my hair for the first time. And this isn't even the worst thing to happen. Their epic it were people to get to hang out and get to know new people. It is meant to be safe setting for individuals who have difficulties connecting with other people. They embrace a neurodiverse community, which includes individuals with mental disabilities and other difficulties they may experience on the regular to intermediate basics. Everything here feels so natural. It is like another world falling full of the best people I have ever met. It is led by these two women named Kim and Corey. If you ever stop by at the Epic office when we are able to visit the place again, you can always find Corey leading and being the announcer of some games that got too loud, too quiet quickly. Kim can always be found catching up with everybody about what they've been doing, and holding these most lively conversations with while flipping the most cheese quesadillas. Doesn't this sound like the best place to spend your Wednesday? How I came about Epic was not of my doing, but of random chance. Both of my parents met Kim and Corey on completely different terms. My dad first met Corey in college, where she was his student, and when my mom met Kim, they instantly became best friends. So when Kim met me and my family, it already felt like she was my family. A lasting story that I have followed me was when Kim and my friend Daniel and I went to go see Daniel's car. He told Kim and I the only thing we couldn't do was don't press the red button. And of course, Kim and I pressed the red button. The next thing you know, the car alarm went off. The noise was so loud, and since then, I have had been called car alarm. This is with the younger age Epic group, and where I have had me made some lifelong friends. But now that I have become an adult, I am moved up into the older age groups at Epic. Something worth knowing about this change is that a lot of my earlier friends from the younger group age have already moved up to the older groups, and now I will be going back to these friends I have since stayed connected to through since social media and online. The point of this is while I am changing into an older and different group, it isn't as different as it seems. I will still have Kim and Corey, and I will still have some of my friends of the past. I will still have some area of support, even though I will be placed into a new setting. It is a change for me to meet a new people and grow the relationship I already had. The key to be growing up is networking, but that is some buzzword that doesn't explain the depth of what it truly means. We have to cherish and put into the work to maintain the relationship. We never know. We will see people after meeting them. The small part of this comparison is remodeling my room, but it is a lot more impactful. Just some coats of paint. It is changed my surroundings and the past, the place that I will go back to every night to start my day with every day. I am at the point where I need to remodel my room because I've changed since the first growing up in this room, and it was time for me, my environment, to reflect that there are times when change happens from us meeting, reacting, and others times when change is reaction of the time in the environment to us. This was the time of me for me to reflect on how much I've grown as a person. At first, there was too much space to fill in, and I don't know what to put. Now I've learned more about myself and what I need in my life to fill the emptiness that was there before a queen-size bed was put in for me. My old twin-size bed. I painted the walls of my room from blue to orange, and blue and orange, to pink and purple, with the rest of my house being painted white. This was where I could add my own color and flair. Of course, it had to get my mother's approval, but she was open to me being my own person. And the change that came with that I was the director of my change, and so are you. You may at times feel powerless or without control, but remember that you can change control to how you react and respond when it is getting to be too much. I had anchors at home, and while not everyone does, remember to thank and appreciate those around you, and they don't have to be your day one, but maybe someone who was there at at their at the right time. For me, it was seemed the change in my room. I was still in the comfort of my home. I was still around the same white walls of my childhood, but now I I could have I could add my own colors. Like a setting like a room is important to seeing the change in ourselves and accepting the challenges that come with that. Hold on to some comfort, but don't 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 let it hold you down. So from moving into a new friend group at Epic to remodeling my room, the surroundings of my life did change and continue to change. Change will happen whether we choose to accept it with open arms is our call. We can alter your change to fit the direction we are seeing, or sometimes it comes out unexpected areas. Be the change you want to see in yourself, and surround yourself with those you know will be there, support you during this time of transition. This is meant those who are on the cusp of their change during or those thinking of changing something in their life but haven't found the courage. I hope this response and brings some comfort to everyone on the ideas of change that we all have are or will be going through. No matter how large or small, there is always something to learn from change without hiding. Thank you.
Thank you, Jasmine, for teaching us about how change doesn't have to be as scary, but also something we can accept as a process. Now we'll be going to Jake Yancey, who'll be telling us about how there's no perfect guide to parenting, but also how our earlier experiences can influence who we become.
Once upon a time, there was a farmer this farmer had a mule. Day after day, the farmer would wake up in the morning only to spend it begging the mule to pull the farmer's wagon to the market. The mule would not budge. Now, I would like to say that the farmer eventually gave up and got over it. Unfortunately, this isn't that kind of story, and he isn't that kind of farmer. Days wore on, and the farmer tried, without success, to get the mule to move. Finally, after a very long time, he found that harsh beatings could move the animal. But eventually, the mule grew tough and calloused from the farmer's stick. So the man tried offering the mule a carrot, and it worked. So the farmer spent the rest of his days working the mule, trading off between the threat of the stick and the promise of the carrot. Throughout history, this story's primary purpose has been to teach children about reward versus punishment styles of learning. Just recently, this style of parenting has been frowned upon by society through social media. However, until the rise of social media, children were expected to be raised. All children grew up like this, including myself. Hello, my name is Jake Yancey. I'm 17, I go to CK McClatchy, and I'm now living my own life. For the record, I consider myself to have lived a pretty sheltered life. My hope is that you'll look past who I appear to be and focus instead on what I have to say. When I was growing up, my father used a carrot versus stick method of teaching myself. Most would agree that children are impacted psychologically on how they're raised. Experiences create strong emotions which impact and follow a child for the rest of their adult life. Almost all families do this unintentionally. They can't help what experiences impact their child or not. Unfortunately, my family was a little bit different. My dad intentionally created these experiences, artificially. He sought a more experimental method of learning than just lectures to teach my brothers and I what was right and what was wrong. I remember when I was 5 or 6, my dad gave my brothers and I several quarters. He had a penny that he would flip. He'd encourage us to bet our quarters, and if we got it right, then we'd double our quarters. If we got it wrong, we'd not only lose our quarters, but we would also get soap in our mouth. Sometimes we'd get spanked. The first time he did this, I got the soap 13 times before I quit. It was a pretty clear lesson. The thrill of gambling is almost never worth the reward. Since that day, I still refuse obvious forms of gambling. I won't bet, not even on the simplest of things, like whether the sky is blue or not. I just can't. My dad had imprinted his distaste for gambling onto myself and my brothers. Some people, when they hear about this story, are disturbed that someone would go to these lengths to teach a lesson. But honestly, I've never minded it. Still growing up, I can look back and appreciate the lessons my father taught me. I see kids around me who suffer from addictions, something I know I will never have to suffer because I'm too afraid of the consequences to ever take the risk for the reward. Another time in my life, my dad wanted me to regularly brush my teeth. So he made a punishment for my brothers and I for if we didn't brush our teeth every morning, we'd have to go outside, grab a handful of dirt, and put it in our mouth. Then we'd have to come back inside to show it to him. We'd open our mouths to show that we had enough dirt, and he'd put in some liquid soap and tell us to gargle for a whole minute. Then we'd finally be allowed to spit it and go back outside, and then finally brush our teeth all over again. Suffice to say, we learned to brush our teeth pretty quickly after that. After I got a bit older, my dad began to increasingly devise more and more two-sided punishments to teach us lessons. A couple of years ago, he bought a couple large boulders and a lot of large rocks from a local quarry. He set them outside in our backyard and had us chip them into smaller rocks. He had specific dimensions for his punishments. For example, he'd say something like, go break 100 rocks or go break 150 rocks. These specific dimensions made it more difficult for us. The point of the punishment was to show how we can work hard for no obvious gain. He also wanted us to deal with the stares we got from neighbors. They walked by us and they stared at us, and I hated it. I disliked standing out, and I disliked the questions I got even more. But after a couple years looking back, I can see what my father was doing. He had forced my brothers and I into circumstances we had no real control over. his house, his rules, but he wanted us to realize that we could still act and be who we wanted to, despite the exterior circumstances. We still had control over ourselves, and that was the point of the lesson. It wasn't an excuse to have those types of circumstances and to act poorly because of them. They might shape the way I act, but at the end of the day, I should take responsibility for how I act or who I am. Furthermore, he wanted to teach us that we should never be afraid of being ourselves, even if we risk the judgment of others. In fact, especially if we risk others' judgment, we should be true to ourselves because that's who we will have to wake up with and fall asleep with every day and night for the rest of our lives. The most lasting and probably the greatest of experiments my dad performed on us was the one about social media, or rather the lack of it. He used parental controls on our devices and still does today. We never got access to social media platforms as kids, and only now, later on, have I started branching out to explore what I never had as a child. This was significant because I was, and still am, growing up in a generation that uses technology all the time. I felt cut off, being the only kid in my grade without a phone until much later in high school. I didn't know media references or celebrities. I felt like I was speaking a completely different language. But then as I got older, I started to see it a bit differently. I noticed that I never felt like I could talk with my classmates because they never really communicated. Yes, of course they talked, but they never communicated. I saw how historically kids were raised in a reward versus punishment style of learning household. You'd see in the past decades the greatest gains in social rights have been seen by kids. It started with the rise of social media and public awareness. Social media has actually been around for all of Gen Z's lifetime, an occurrence not yet seen by any generation yet. Not even millennials have had access to technology and social media on the global scale Gen Z has. Generation Z has made claims to all sorts of things, among them being the most accepting generation of people's differences. And that might just be true. However, it's my belief that because of social media, our generation is actually the most callous and unempathetic to date. Let me explain. In Gen Z's lifetime, there's been a greater public debate on how best to raise your child. The greater part of society had already decided that a carrot versus stick teaching was unacceptable before we were even born. Things like spankings, beatings, chewing bars of soap, or belting were no longer socially acceptable. What most people probably didn't realize was that these punishments laid out and enforced the ground rules of society. They taught us what and what not was okay. So with the rollback in this style of teaching, something was bound to take its place in developing a child emotionally. That something was social media. You see, kids entering social media still had a carrot versus stick learning experience. The only difference was that how it was administered. Now your stick wasn't the belt, but maybe a bad comment you got on a picture. Your carrot wasn't the dessert, but the number of likes you got on a witty post. We claim as a whole generation to understand that all people should be equal and treated the same despite our differences. To an extent, we do this better than some. But in some respects, we fail abysmally. Rather than telling people who they should be or what they should look like, we use social media to project our ideas on how people should think and act. We live around these expectations and try to fit each other into boxes rather than communicating openly with each other. We fear being wrong or judged for not having the same opinion as others. But this message is almost as bad as those before. We limit ourselves by refusing to accept or understand anyone raised differently than us. But this isn't just limiting. It isn't just limiting how we first perceive others, and it isn't just limiting how our generation, how they were before, how the generations before us were. This is because we cap our communication skills from an early age. We never learn how to communicate with people different from us, and we use tools like social media to give us exposure only to those with the same opinions as us. And social media has taken the place of regular social interactions, so we don't even have any other experience to draw from. My classmates were growing up right beside me, But from my perspective, they weren't really growing up at all. While I learned to communicate intelligently with adults, my friends were still stuck in their same old habits. They weren't maturing at all, emotionally, that is. Now, this isn't to say that I'm so much better a person than my classmates were, but I have come to appreciate the lessons that my dad gave me. I realized that something about social media must have been stunting their emotional growth. Still is, in fact. They learned to change themselves to fit in with others, while I learned to be myself. They learned the okay amount of texts you could send a person, while I learned how to empathize. And this is the crux of the problem, I think. We live in a generation of emotional incompetence. Those who came from a background similar to mine, one of carrots and sticks, they learned principles, hard work, honesty, habits, respect, and communication. But these traits aren't natural to humankind. In replacing the carrot versus stick way of teaching values with something like social media, we changed to the values being taught, values that were always there but not as pronounced as they are in Gen Z. And today, this has created tensions between people raised differently. It's almost to the point where we've stopped communicating in a way that others can even understand. Some values are different, but the way that we communicate doesn't have to be ruled by how we were raised. At the end of the day, aren't we all just people? Now, I'm not trying to polarize individuals into different groups, but rather trying to point out that all the things we choose to ignore by saying there's only one way to raise another. The truth is that there isn't any truth. Sorry to break it to you, but people will never be clean cut. Protecting a child is not always the answer, but neither is overexposure. It's a matter of balance. Don't get me wrong, I am proud and appreciative of the way I was raised, but I will never tell someone that my way is the only way. There are good traits that come from rigid control and bad traits, just like everything else. And here's my point. The key is empathy. If I am correct and people can't be cleanly cut up and fit inside their own little boxes, then we must choose empathy. Here's what I'm saying. Rather than critiquing your neighbor's box and discussing the differences, improve the communication by seeking to understand their box. Try to understand who they are. This will be so incredibly difficult. It's always harder to come outside of yourself and learn to appreciate from someone else's perspective. It's hard to walk in someone else's shoes, but you should try it anyways. Just remember this at the end of the day. The hardest step a man can take isn't the first, it's the next. Thank you.
Would you pick the carrot or the stick? Thank you, Jake, for sharing your experiences with us. And now we'll be going to Lilia Infantino and what it's like to be a sibling of someone with mental disabilities.
Albert Einstein was considered one of the greatest scientists of the early 19th century, a genius. So once he was diagnosed with the idea of autism, how come he is still considered a genius when in modern times, and especially kids with autism or any other neurodivergency, are treated differently than anybody else? They are treated like they are obviously different, and yet they should be treated equal. They deserve to be treated equal. They are socially shamed and bullied for their differences from others, and I've seen the harm the stereotype causes through my sister Raina, and how she is treated just because of the things that make her who she is. This is Raina. She's 14 years old and loves anything sparkly or glittery or just basically anything from the movie Frozen. She is treated differently and shamed if she talks and acts immature for her age, or that she's too emotional and can't take a joke. People specifically with autism have suppressed and hidden the things that can potentially out them as autistic, and it brings great tolls onto them, including my sister. This type of hiding is called masking, in which a person changes their social behavior, which conceals the behavior that might be viewed as socially unacceptable or weird. Not only does masking hide its true emotions and actions, but it is tiresome and overwhelming to do. I see this in my sister, who often has difficulties with being in public for a while, and at one point was easily reacting to any difficulties with a fit, whether in public or in the comfort of our home. Home is a safe space where any emotions hidden throughout the day come out, whether sadness or anger. Raina never seems to hide her personality, though. As she once was extremely shy, she is now super outgoing, bold, and just confident with really any interaction. She's probably spoken to more workers in person and on the phone than I have. It's honestly super funny to listen or watch the interactions just because she gets straight to the point, but with please and thank yous. From when she was literally hiding behind my parents when meeting a new person, to now going up to any kid her age, introducing herself. She has more social confidence than anyone I know and isn't too afraid to show it. Still, this comes with a negatively seen issue. Her friends she interacts with and loves to talk to for hours at any day consider her overbearing or just talking too much. And I admit it too. I sometimes don't want to talk with her either for the same reasons. However, after my many years of subconsciously trying to change this behavior, I realized that the people who love and care about her need to embrace her for who she is. Because Raina does her best to keep her friends liking her and to spend time with a family all together, and doesn't nitpick our so-called flaws. People with autism need to be accepted for who they are, rather than ridiculed or ostracized from friendships just for their social skills and individuality. Another issue is the inclusion and how people with autism are seen. Since autism is a spectrum, there is obviously the high-functioning autism and the lower-functioning autism. However, these labels are considered harmful as moods and other variables change their abilities and functionality. Terms like high support and lower support needs are considered better, as people with autism can be better grouped under the specific daily help this person needs. Society tends to put all people with autism under a generalization, in where low support needing people are told, "I never knew you had autism." And since most consider those with autism are all the same on the higher support needing side, there are many who are highly in need of daily support, but there are also people with autism who do not need such support, or a mix. So when people with autism are put in this stereotype, many people's reactions are to treat a person with so-called disorder or disability as they are mentally impaired and in need of constant support. They then are treated like young children or elders, caring for them very sweetly and gently, as they do not want to overwhelm or confuse them. This goes along with hyperfixation, as many people with autism have specific interests or topics they absolutely adore, and this is known as hyperfixation. And as I said earlier, Raina loves Frozen. Other people would say that love is an understatement, as she has a bunch of Frozen merchandise and was a Frozen character for Halloween probably 3 years in a row. Had a birthday party themed by the movie Frozen, etc. But now, as she is 14, many people would consider her crazy and immature and childish to have interest in Disney princess movies. And this goes for many hyperfixations people do have, as they can be deemed childish and are treated the age their interests seem to be for. On the plus side, no one has to struggle with gift ideas. Treating people with autism like there's something wrong with their brain function and their social awareness is something to be stopped. Shows like The Good Doctor and The Big Bang Theory spread light into how people with autism are aware and can academically succeed. Raina is really good with electronics and a variety of video games. So not only do many who are considered to be on the low support side of the spectrum have the ability to keep up in a conversation and do their best to do so, but they can also be extremely intelligent in the things they are interested in. As everyone's brains work and act differently, everyone is able to do things that others might struggle with, and yet are not separated with those like autism have been. Therefore, they should not be treated any differently due to them being labeled disabled and autistic, because autism is almost like a superpower at some time, not to be an insult used when someone does something idiotic. Using autistic as an insult is so harmful to anyone who has firsthand experience with autism, and especially to those who do have autism. I hear my peers at school call each other retarded, autistic, and sped, and it makes me want to yell at them. I've seen my sister cry because not just being around the use of these words, but she has been called these things in such a negative way. When using these words as insults, it further discriminates and shames the people who are dying to feel normal and treated like everyone else. Purena and probably any other person with autism has at least once wondered why they were different or why they were bad compared to everyone without autism. We shouldn't keep feeding these lies that autism is a horrible disease that has no cure, but accept, embrace, and help make those with autism comfortable and able to feed themselves. As someone who is outside the autism spectrum but is experiencing the tolls autism and other special needs have on individuals and others around them, being able to interact with other teenagers who are in somewhat similar situations as me really helps me feel comfortable with my experiences that we share, as we are not alone. Organizations such as Warmline provide me the opportunity to speak and learn so much about myself and my relationships with my siblings, as well as giving me a place to communicate with other kids my age who go through the extra struggles our families face. While you may not be a sibling or directly connected to someone who is facing these challenges, then please take this message as a means of being open-minded to the fact that not everyone's normality matches, and that it's a beautiful thing that we should be celebrating, teaching ourselves about, and most of all, extending out kindness. Thank you.
I can personally relate to those experiences, but thank you so much, Lilia, for helping everyone become a little bit more educated of what our situation is like. Now we'll be running along to our sibling duo of John Almeida and Anthony Zulli, and what it's like to, again, be a sibling of someone with mental disabilities, but also being their advocate.
Hi, my name is Anthony. I am 11 years old, and I'm here to talk to you about this amazing person next to me. This is John. Say hi, John.
Hi.
You see, John is a professional runner and just ran the Boston Marathon last year. John just happens to have nonverbal autism, and in this 6-minute video, I'm going to show you how he broke down barriers and he lived life without limits in 6 minutes.
Thank you, men and women, for your sacrifice. This run is for You.
Looking good, John. Looking good. Keep going. You did it.
John, thanks for bringing me home.
Drea, are you so proud of John going to the Boston Marathon? Yep. Anything you want to tell the world about your boyfriend?
Go, John, go!
Boy, every single time I watch that video, it just makes my soul do a Fortnite dance. You see, I remember when I was about 5. It was Halloween time, and we went to Target to go look at the costumes. And when we entered Target, we were looking at the costumes. John was really excited. He was really happy. He loves everything to do with Halloween. So he was stemming, which is he flops his hand around in the air in a motion like this. You see? And that means that he's happy. So a lady was looking at him was kind of like glaring at him, like rolling her eyes, and I politely explained to her what autism was. She apologized, and in that moment, I knew that I was going to be defined as John's advocate. You know, John works so hard every single day, and I want to double that, so I want to be just like him, you know? So I always play basketball outside in our driveway, and that's really fun, you know? And all hoopers know this. When you shoot and it hits like the base of the basketball hoop, like what's keeping it stand up, and it just bounces off of that and rolls into the street, you just hate that moment. Or it like just goes far, you just want to like literally just throw the basketball hoop. Yeah, so John darts after the ball, right? And so the car is coming around the corner. And so the car stops, puts on the brakes, and honks at him. And John's like, well, no, you know? It's kind of like, okay. And then he honks at him again. And then John starts, all right, I've had enough of this. So he starts running. He starts literally bolting after the car. And the guy puts it in fourth gear and starts rolling down the street. It's like I was scared for the guy's life. It was like he was tumbling down the road. It was crazy. And then he was still running like the Roadrunner, just beep, beep, gone. You know, it's kind of crazy. And I will always remember that moment through my life. And a question that we get asked often a lot is, how do we communicate with John? And he had an iPad, which he really disliked to use because he thought it was too simple. Because everything he has to do, it has to be hard work and dedication. So what he did is that he started learning American Sign Language. He loves learning American Sign Language. And you don't talk to him. He can listen. You don't talk to him like he's a toddler or a 2-year-old. Just talk to him like he's a normal person. Just because his speech isn't the greatest doesn't mean that he can't listen to you. So, yeah. And he has many jobs, you know. Speaking with one, he's a dog walker. He does landscaping. He puts in porches. He puts in graves, you know. He digs holes, whatever you want, really. And John, he's very spoken for, so I'm sorry, but he will be celebrating his 2 years with his girlfriend, Drea, in November. He gets all of his attention from working hard. I mean, he woke up at 4 a.m., you know. He didn't complain about anything. He just runs. That's literally his stomping ground. He works hard just like Kobe, and that really inspires me. He's the first one to get there. He's the last one to leave, you know. And it's kind of crazy. He has no limits. Just because he has nonverbal autism doesn't mean, you know, nonverbal does not mean unable. And John inspires me to believe myself that I could have I can achieve my goal to be in the NBA, because he has had more challenges that I will maybe ever have, you know. And watching him achieve his dream just wants me to achieve it even more. So I believe in myself all the way. And I'd like to thank my brother, actually, for watching me like a hawk in every single one of my basketball games. He stares me down, even on the bench. He's like, you better drink that water. You better drink that water, you know? And it's kind of funny, because the way he's looking at me, he's like, and then I know he's signaling me to drink the water, and it's kind of cool, because he's like my little spotter, you know? It's kind of awesome. Yeah. I'd like to also thank my mom for driving to us all of our practices, games, camps, races, all of those things, even though she claps the loudest on the sidelines. It's super embarrassing. I mean, really embarrassing. It's help me, you know. It really embarrasses me, but you know, we all know that you're really proud of us, and so we love you, Mom. And some of the smartest people I know have autism. So like all dreams are possible. You know, John is still unlocking gifts. Anybody can unlock gifts, and if your child is interested in something, take it on. You can. You could do anything. Anything is possible. Sky is the limit. Thank you. And I like to end with a quote from Dr. Temple Grandin. Different, not less. Just because you have autism, you are different, not less. I love that. Different, not less. Thank you.
Wasn't that inspiring? Don't you want to run as fast as John? Thank you, John and Anthony, for sharing your experiences. And now we'll be going to Jordan Baker, who will be talking to us on the topic of colorism.
Hi, my name is Jordan Baker and I'm a Sacramento resident. This city is where I lived all my life. This is where my parents were born, where they met, where they grew up, and they had my sister and I. When I was younger, my favorite part of the city was the park across the street from my house, as well as Funderland and the zoo. And now I'm 17, and as much as I like the zoo, it's not at the top of my list. What I've come to appreciate the most about the city is the diversity I see in our city and all of the cultures I've experienced while growing up. Not every city has kids that look like me or my sister. It's not in every city in California where you can run errands and hear 3 different languages at the grocery store. It's not in every city where there's families from all over, like El Salvador or Iran. It's not in every city where there's first-generation Americans and newly immigrant families. I've experienced so much growing up here. I've learned so much about other cultures and walks of life and family. When I was in 1st grade, I had a best friend named Fatima, and we would always eat lunch together, and she was Arabic, and so she brought food that I've never seen before, and I was always so interested in it, and she'd always let me try some, and I'm really grateful that she did. When I was 8, I didn't really appreciate that, but now that I'm older and I look back on it, I'm so lucky to have experienced different cultures, and it was just a part of growing up. I didn't have to go out seeking it, it just was there. But I've learned from my own experiences and conversations with family and friends that growing up in a racially and ethnically diverse city does not completely dissolve the issues of racism. In fact, most people of color in California or in America in general have some memorable experience with racism. Now in the era of George Floyd, the Trump administration, and Black Lives Matter protests, more people, especially young people, are learning about social injustice, specifically systemic racism. But today, I don't want to talk about systemic racism. Instead, I want to talk about something that a lot of us may not know about, and that is colorism. There's so many topics within the definition of colorism and so many avenues you can take when talking about it, but I think just learning the basics, just learning a little bit about it and its definition can help anybody understand just a little more about how deep race, prejudice, and social hierarchy go. Colorism was coined by Alice Walker in the 1960s, and since that is still fairly recent, many might not know the true definition of colorism or that experiences they've had resemble colorism. So, the definition of colorism, according to Merriam-Webster, is prejudice or discrimination, especially within an ethnic or racial group favoring those with lighter skin over those with darker skin. So for some background, I wanted to share a couple pictures with my family. So on the right, we have a picture of my dad on the left and my uncle on the right when they were younger, like in high school. And on the left, we have a picture of my family about 8 or 9 years ago with my dad and my mom and my little sister. So I'm biracial. My dad is black and my mom is Mexican and white. And growing up biracial, it comes with different feelings and its own kind of internal struggles with identity and stuff like that. But when I was younger, I didn't really think about that. I kind of more thought that I wanted darker skin like my dad's side of the family. So as you can see, my dad does have way darker skin than me, and my sister does have a little darker skin than me. But whenever I'd go visit his family in Los Angeles and I'd hang out with them, I'd kind of feel a little left out because everyone kind of didn't really look like me. And I was a little sad about that. I would get teased a little bit. And that was kind of always just my feeling until I got older, especially when I got to high school and I started getting more involved in social justice issues and learning about things like racism and colorism. And what I learned was that younger kids, especially at the time when I was thinking these things, I was wanting lighter skin. But a lot of kids that look like my sister or kids with way darker skin, might have wanted my skin tone. And I never really thought of that until I was older. If you know anything about American history, you might recognize the term mulatto, which was used during the colonization of the Americas to describe a person with African or slave ancestry and white European ancestry. So these people had lighter skin than slaves, but darker skin than white Europeans. And because of that, they were kind of in the middle of the social hierarchy. They weren't treated as inhumanely as slaves, but they still did not get the same respect that white Europeans got. White passing was considered good because the root of colorism and racism is that lighter skin equals good and darker skin equals bad. So these people had a lot more opportunity when it came to owning land, even owning slaves at some points, and getting access to education. And so I like to think about this when I think about colorism, because my lighter skin gives me more access to opportunities and advantages over people that don't have as light of skin as me, so those who have darker skin than as me. So like I mentioned, the root of colorism is lighter skin equals good and darker skin equals bad. And so that is, beauty standards are also affected by this notion. So when I was in middle school, I straightened my hair every day. This started in 6th grade when people would frequently comment on my hair. It wasn't even that curly. I would get comments like, "Your hair is so frizzy," or "How many times a day do you brush your hair?" and things like that. And it hurt me so much that I decided to get up 45 minutes earlier every day for 2 years to straighten my hair. And as you can see from this picture, my hair was so fried and so damaged because I would not stop straightening my hair. My mom would always tell me to stop, but I wouldn't because I thought I looked prettier with straight hair. And this goes back to the preference for people with lighter skin over those with darker skin. This is also an issue that we see in Hollywood. This is a huge issue, and Zendaya has talked about it a lot, where darker skinned black actors who would be perfect for roles that showcase someone with darker skin, those roles are given to those with lighter skin, either biracial actors and actresses or just those with lighter skin. So an example that I have heard referenced many times is the case with The Hate U Give, where the cover of the book clearly shows the main character having way darker skin than the character casted in the film. Amanda Steinberg has much lighter skin than was depicted in the book. So this is an example lots of people like to bring up when they talk about colorism in Hollywood. Outside of Hollywood, colorism is still a very big issue, especially in post-colonial countries where lighter skin is still considered superior to darker skin. So far I've only talked about colorism when it affects me and my family and those experiences, but I think that having tangible evidence, like statistics, is really beneficial to anybody who wants to understand just a little bit more about how colorism can impact people's entire lives. So some of the statistics I presented here are in regards to employment and overall quality of life. So for instance, darker skinned black men are less preferred than lighter skinned black men, no matter the qualifications and education experience to employers. And on average, lighter skinned Mexican Americans have an overall better quality of life when it comes to mental health, education, and income. Furthermore, darker-skinned defendants in court cases are more likely to be convicted and receive the death penalty than those with lighter skin. Also, India's skin lightening cream, Fair and Lovely, has 38 million users worldwide. And also, a Vanderbilt study of 2,000 immigrants showed that, on average, the lighter-skinned immigrants earn between 8 and 15% more yearly income. Colorism is more than just statistics and facts. There are real-world examples, and this can happen in our own backyard. For example, on my sister's first week of her freshman year in high school, she experienced an example of racism, and when I think about it, I think of it as an example of colorism. The school's website was hacked, and there were terrible racial slurs and other sentences referencing the KKK and other awful things on the website. And when she explained it to me, I kind of thought of the privilege I have. I don't go to that school, but if I did, I would feel so uncomfortable. But because of my lighter skin, I might not come across as biracial or black to anybody who was walking in the hallways. This goes to show that colorism and racism are alive and well. And I think that the best way to combat this is just education. So these are some Instagram accounts that I found. I'm not affiliated with these Instagram accounts. I just found them while I was doing a little bit more research. And I think that even just following an Instagram account, which is super simple, can help anybody understand a little more and be able to do their own research. It's super duper helpful. So the first Instagram account I wanted to mention was Colorism Healing. I found this doing a little more research on colorism and seeing people's opinions. And she posts her quotes, she posts information about other people that she works with, and she frequently goes on live in her Instagram stories and talks about her opinions on colorism. The second Instagram account I wanted to mention was Black and Embodied. I really like this account. I think that it's just important to lift Black voices up, especially at a time like this. And she always provides her insight and talks about just everything going on right now in the world, and she always reposts things that are super beneficial in learning about colorism and racism and social injustice. These are just resources that I found helpful, but if you don't have Instagram or want to do a little more online research, nccj.org's page on colorism is super helpful. It's where I got these statistics. But the main point I want to emphasize is that education and advocating for Black youth and Black adults and educating yourself on colorism and racism is super duper important, and all you have to do is be an advocate. Thank you.
As Jordan said, there is always more to learn. Thank you for what you shared. And now we're going to be going to our next speaker, Jaslyn Hawk, and what it's like to be our biggest bullies, but also uncovering ways that we can learn to love ourselves.
Hi, my name is Jaslyn Hawk, and today I get to be my own TEDx speaker. My first experience with TED Talks and TEDx Talks as a whole came from my 9th grade freshman year class. All 9th grade freshmen were required to do the same exact assignment. We had to look at a few different TEDx speakers or TED speakers and analyze the way that they talked and how their words impacted the audience in a way. The one thing they all had in common was that they were these amazing, important people who had done amazing, important things, and they were able to speak about them in amazing, important ways. And freshman year, young and naive as I was, young and naive as I still am, I thought, hey, maybe one day I can be one of those speakers. Like, I will be one of those important, amazing people who can say like these important, amazing things and talk about the most important, amazing things that they've done. Like, maybe that can be me. And then we flash forward like a few years, and current day Jaslyn Hawk has received an invitation to do a TEDx talk. And my first instinct when I get the invitation, like, say no, jump ship, like, this is such a bad idea, please forget it, this, like, why are you even asking me? Like, I wanted to say no right away. And this isn't my first experience with having negative thoughts right off the bat when I'm experiencing an opportunity like this. It's like this sweet voice in my head who says all these cruel, cruel words, and she's like the most persistent voice like ever, because she'll keep saying these negative things over and over again. And I don't know when she started popping up into my life. Maybe it's just a byproduct of getting older and more cynical, losing my optimism as like things happen to me. But I know she won't shut up ever since, and she's probably kind of talking to me right now, telling me, oh, like, this is your one opportunity to have a TEDx talk, and you're talking about like yourself, you're so obsessed with yourself, like, why don't you use this platform to talk about something actually important instead of like your own stupidity? My sophomore year of high school, I used to have this issue with waking up in the mornings, and this was mainly because of this voice in my life. I would lay in bed and I would get up because my alarm would be ringing really loudly, and I just like physically couldn't force myself to brush my teeth or like do anything except shut up my alarm. I would just lay there and think about how like if I didn't get up this morning, nothing in the world would change. Like everyone would just keep moving forward without me. Like maybe how many days can how many days can I stay in this bed and like no one will care and the world will keep moving forward? But then eventually I would like get the energy, or my parents would yell at me, and I would get up, get in my car, go to school, and I would have to make up these excuses to my friends, even though they were my friends. I would say something like, oh, my orthodontist was being super annoying, like, she's annoying, or the parking lot was super clogged, and my house is kind of far away, so like, obviously I'm late. Like, my friends would rag on me for being late all the time, and it would frustrate my teachers, but I couldn't say something like, oh, I was questioning the validity of my existence while staring up at my ceiling and being super sleep deprived and super miserable. I couldn't say, like, people don't say things like that to their friends, especially when it's something so small as like getting up in the morning. Like, everyone else drinks a cup of coffee, sucks it up, and does their thing. Like, why couldn't I do it? And eventually I figured out a way to like stop doing, like, not stop, but I figured out a coping mechanism for things like this, for when things come up in my life and I want to do them, or when I want to get up in the morning. I know this has a negative connotation, by the way. I just lie to myself, like, constantly. I'm muffling that voice that just hits me with the negatives about everything in life and like questioning my existence or whatever, and I amplify a voice that instead like tells me positive things about myself. And these positive things, they feel wrong. They feel like lies, because it will be something like my getting up in the morning example. I'll get up in the morning and I'll say something like, this is gonna be the best day of my life. Like, my teachers are all gonna, like, my teacher might even bake me a cake this morning, and like, if I don't go to school, I'm not gonna be able to get that cake. Or like, if I fail an exam because I didn't study for it or something, I'll tell myself, oh, I learned from next time, and just failing this exam just guarantees I'll do better next time, because life balances out like that. And admittedly, some lies are more harmless than others. I had like this stupid thing going where I was a pretty decent essay writer, and after I wrote this essay, I just felt really bad about it, and I told myself, if I get anything below an A on this essay, like senior year of high school, I will get early admittance into Yale or Stanford, like into one of the Ivy Leagues. And then that made me feel good, because I was like, if I fail this essay, I get that guaranteed happy moment. But it was a lie per se, because when the essay came back with the A, I was happy because I got the A that I wanted. And it didn't matter that it was a lie, because either solution was making me happy. And that's something harmless. Something more like decidedly harmful is when I would like assume other people's opinions. Like, I would lie about their own opinion. When my best friend and I had like this huge, awful, terrible fight, I told myself, oh, she's not talking to me, or like, she's not talking to me and she doesn't want to be around me because she just doesn't know how to express that she still cares about me, even though like all this stuff happened. Or when my parents, like, they would be angry at me, or they would like, you know how parents are. But when something like that would happen, I would tell myself, like, they definitely still love me. I'm gonna be an adult soon, and I can handle my relationship with my parents in a better way. Like, I would just tell, and in some cases, they wouldn't be lies per se. They would just be like these half-truths, half-lies, but they always felt wrong, because there would always be that voice telling me, like, my friend hates me, my parents hate me, my like grades are gonna suck no matter how much I study. But I would instead try to amplify these voices with like these lies per se. And all my life, I know we tell children this, like their morals in these children's shows, that like lies are never sustainable. Like, you can't keep living a lie and then expect everything to work out, because lies always reveal themselves to be lies. And maybe like one day I'll realize, if I'm living this lie, like, what am I? Like, am I even, but that's just an existential crisis at that point. But at this point, I realized that I would rather tell myself lies to get myself out of bed than lay in bed all day and listen to that voice saying negative things about myself. I would rather lie about a test score and have faith that I can get a better test score than give up on trying to study for tests at all. I would rather lie and tell myself my best friend like still cares about me than be depressed over how much she hates me. Like, these lies, even though they feel wrong all the time, they keep me going. And maybe there's like this happier version of me who actually believes that like I'm learning from my mistakes, like I'm optimistic, I see the good in people. Maybe that version of me like does exist, and maybe I wouldn't even like her because she's too optimistic and like annoyingly happy. But that's the thing, like, she's happy, and I want that more than anything. So even if it's fictional, even if it's a lie, like, I have to at least try to be that happier version of me. If we're all working toward our own happily ever afters, if my foundation for my happily ever after is a lie, if it's a crumbly, messed up version of a lie, like, that's all right, because at least I have that foundation. At least I have something there, rather than just like laying on the ground, listening to my voice depress me all the time. And I have a reason to like want this happily ever after, because I know that there are people in my life that care about me, that like they genuinely do care about me and they support me. You accept the love that you think you deserve. And I genuinely think everybody in their life deserves at least some form of love. And that should apply to me too, even though I might not believe it. People do love me, and I can't just wallow in my own misery for the rest of my life and be selfish like that, because I know people care about me and I have to do my best for them. So if that's my motivation to keep on building these lies, that's all right. And I will keep, and that's how I got here today. That's how I keep moving forward through my life. And that's why I'm here speaking right now about like the lies I tell myself. And I think it is important to have like these different representations of mental health. Like on the surface, I might seem super normal, like super adorable, but in the inside, I'm a mess sometimes, and I'm like hating on myself, and like maybe I'm not okay all the time when I say like I'm fine, but just opening up about that is super hard. Like it is so hard. Like right now it's hard, and I know it's hard for anyone trying to talk about their feelings with like even people they trust. Like just because we don't have those representations of mental health out there, like because it's just so hard to do. And I hope just sharing my own story like helps other people think that their own stories about mental health and their own coping mechanisms, however weird they or crazy they think they might be, those are valid too. Anything that keeps you going towards your happy ending, or even anything that keeps you going towards your happy ending, like mental health wise, is fine. And you should be able to do whatever you want in order for that. So if there's one thing I have to end this TEDx speak about, I want to say, hi, my name is Jaslyn Hawk. I don't think I've done anything important with my life, but I'm still here talking to you all today. And my life is a work in progress, and that is okay. All of our lives are a work in progress. And I'm working towards my own happily ever after, where I'm riding off into the sunset with like the people of my dreams. And even though that happily ever after might never exist, I think that just having that hope, just having that belief in yourself, even if it does feel like a lie, that's okay for me, and that's how I'm gonna live my life. Like, if I can keep moving forward with my life in this way, you can keep moving forward with your life in any way you want it to. It's possible. You can do it. I can do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jaslyn, for your words. And now we'll be swimming along to our next speaker, Milton Nguyen, of what it's like to learn from our lowest experience, but how that can be a very influential experience.
One of the things that I hated the most at the beginning of each school year was how many icebreaker activities we would have to go through. For those who don't know what an icebreaker is, it's basically a quick activity that helps to introduce yourself to a group of people. One could say you're breaking the ice, as the name implies. For example, hi everyone, my name is Milton Nguyen. I'm an 11th grade student at Miraloma High School, and I love to travel. Like that, an icebreaker could be something as simple as what you enjoy doing, but the one I saw most often growing up in schools, it asked you to share something about yourself that most people wouldn't know about you. I always thought icebreakers were kind of a waste of time and a waste of effort, but looking back now in retrospect, they turned out to be a great time of self-reflection and introspection for myself. So when it came time for me to answer that question about something most people wouldn't know about me, I would always use the same default response year after year. I would say that I learned how to swim before I learned how to walk. It was an interesting and unique statement, but more importantly, it reflected something fundamental about me. It reflected my love and my passion for swimming. The most ironic part of this statement, though, is that for a very long time as a baby and a young child learning how to swim, I absolutely hated swimming. My parents had somehow persuaded me to take swimming lessons not out of enjoyment, but out of necessity, to have that basic life-saving skill of knowing how to swim. Looking back now in retrospect, I thank God and both my parents every single day for that opportunity, as so many people are deprived of it and ultimately lose their life as a result of it. But when I was younger and when I was learning how to swim, I didn't have that sense of reflection, that sense of retrospection, or that sense of gratitude. And when I'd arrive to the pool for my swim lessons, I'd hold on to my car seat as if my life depended on it, in the hopes that I wouldn't have to swim that afternoon. I would throw temper tantrums and fits as my parents hoped and prayed to God that I would learn just enough to know how to swim. They didn't want me to fall in love with the sport of swimming or become an Olympian. All they wanted was to know that their son would be safe if he was ever at a pool, at a beach, or at a water park. But for me, swimming just was not my cup of tea. Looking back now in retrospect, those swim lessons taught me much more than the 4 strokes of swimming or how to blow bubbles underwater. They taught me the fundamental lesson that the uncomfortable situations in life offer us the greatest opportunities to learn and to grow. And that's a lesson I think many of you may have come to realize in your own past experiences. I may have hated almost every single second in the water as a young child, but then again, I now have the knowledge and the skills to be safe around the water. And that's something I believe every single person should have. Those swim lessons taught me how to grow as a person, directly showing me how to change right before my very own eyes. That initial hatred of the water morphed into what became a love for swimming. Now standing before you today as someone who would give up almost anything for swimming. Despite that early hatred of the water, my heart grew and my mind changed to love and embrace the sport. It sounds very cliche to say, but the water to me was like a second home. Spending most of the hours in my day either in or around some body of water helped me to develop this unique connection with the water that ultimately became a pillar in my life. As I mentioned earlier, the uncomfortable situations in life offer us the greatest opportunities to learn and to grow. And with swimming, it was no different. Today, my room is lined with countless trophies and countless medals as a result of years and years worth of swimming. My bedroom is lined and my closet is lined with heaps and heaps of swimming apparel ranging from t-shirts, sweatshirts, parkas, and what seems like an infinite number of swimming caps, swimming goggles, and swimming suits as a result of years and years worth of swimming. My mind is lined with the ideas of perseverance, of determination, of work ethic, as a result of the countless hours of gruesome training that went on before dawn and after dusk every single day, and my body physically strong enough to endure almost anything. Swimming was a very large part of me, and it was something that completed me, and I truly felt like I was on top of the world during that time. But despite all of that, a bit over a year and a half ago was my first experience in what would be one of the lowest and hardest points of my life. Starting off the new year of 2019, my left shoulder presented this new pain. It was small yet noticeable. It was not anything coming from fatigue or from weakness, as I would have been able to recognize that immediately. This was something else, though, something that your body knew should not have been happening. The thing is, though, that swimmers often face complications and issues with their shoulders, almost like runner's knee, but instead with their shoulder. So the good news was that meant my shoulder injury would be easily treatable and easily fixed. But the reality of the situation is that life isn't always chock full of good news. Taking the pressure and the workload off my shoulder proved to do nothing. Physical therapy that was meant to rehabilitate and strengthen my shoulder also proved to do nothing. Orthopedic surgeons, sports medicine doctors, physical therapists, their recommendations proved to do nothing, as that pain persisted and sometimes even worsened. Countless hours in an MRI machine, constant evaluations and checkups, and even an invasive shoulder surgery before the age of 16 proved to do nothing. No matter what method we took, no matter what approach we took, no matter what theory we tried to put behind it, that pain and that injury continued to persist. It felt like we were blindly looking for a needle in a haystack. Despite so recently feeling at the top of the world, I was left in this moment feeling completely abandoned, completely hopeless, sitting right there at rock bottom by myself. Now, I'm not here today to tell you a story that out of nowhere my shoulder injury disappeared as quickly and as magically as it came about. As a matter of fact, I'm still constantly looking and working towards a solution on that front. I'm not here to ask for your condolences or beg for your sympathy for my injury. No. What I am here to talk about, though, is to tell you a story about how my shoulder injury was not a wound, but rather a healing moment. My shoulder injury and the complications that came along with it were yet just another reminder in my life that the uncomfortable situations offer us the greatest opportunities to learn and to grow. In my uncomfortable time of injury, in my uncomfortable time away from the pool, I was able to grow and to learn far more than what would have been possible in the confines of that 25-yard pool. I was able to develop and grow my active passion in tobacco control advocacy, something that has affected my friends and my family quite personally. I've become a leading youth advocate in the field, going as far as becoming a national youth ambassador for the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids. Had the opportunity to advocate for policies and spread awareness for a mission that would help better the lives and better the health of every single person on this planet. My uncomfortable time of injury allowed me to grow and to lead a life that's centered around empathy rather than apathy. I've had the opportunity to testify before the California State Legislature in support of Senate Bill 39 and other measures like that do just that in extending empathy to our state's youth by protecting their lives from the greedy hands of big tobacco. Looking back, my shoulder injury, just like when I first learned how to swim, was a reminder that the uncomfortable situations in life offer us the greatest opportunities to learn and to grow. Now, what I've given you today has been an extremely simplified version of my 16 years of life, and especially the past year and a half of injury that I've suffered. It was not an easy journey to come to the realization of how discomfort and how pain could offer me such a great opportunity for learning and growth. It took time, it took effort, and it took a whole lot of reflection. It took me time as a young child to realize that I truly love swimming. The countless temper tantrums and fits I would throw because of swimming are direct proof of that. It took me time now to see how my injury could be a moment of growth and a moment in learning and advocacy that I would not have known if it weren't for that very same terrible injury. That took time. The constant amount of times I'd sulk around in anger and sadness, cursing the world and God for my injury, are direct proof of that. Looking back in retrospect, each hardship I've faced, no matter how adverse, no matter how heartbreaking or discomforting, they've all turned out to be a great time and a great moment of learning and a great moment of growth. People have faced far worse than I have, and people have faced far less. But the common denominator is through all of that pain and through all that discomfort, there's still always that opportunity for learning and for growth. In order to learn and grow, we must be willing to look back into the past, to reflect. Retrospection is a term I've used often throughout this talk, and for a very specific reason. Retrospection is an analysis of the past, to look back oftentimes into your own past. To look back into the past gives us the opportunity to grow, as without the past, there is no place to grow from. With that, I ask each of you to practice a bit of retrospection in your own life whenever you're ready. Look back into that past moment of discomfort and look for that silver lining. Look for that moment of growth, that moment of learning that may have previously been overcrowded by the raw emotion and the raw discomfort of the moment. Because I tell you, that moment of growth, that moment of learning is surely there, but only if you take the time and the opportunity to seek it out. Now, as I close, I ask for each of you just to keep that idea, that concept of retrospection in the back of your mind. Because as humans, we sometimes have to look in the rearview mirror. Not to become obsessed or laser focused with the past. No, doing that will always result in a crash. But instead, at times, we have to look in the rearview mirror to see the growth and the learning that has put us in the present moment today. But more importantly, we do it to see the growth and the learning that will ultimately catapult us into a future that is filled with hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Milton. I think everyone can take something away from your speech. And now, it's only fitting that we end with the beginning. My brother, Edison Jen, and he and I both hope that you smile during this talk.
Hi, my name is Edison John, not Thomas Edison. I have a couple of titles to introduce myself. I am a gold medalist swimmer of the Special Olympics and a Lego creator. I also love to make stop motion videos and putting them on my YouTube channel, but most importantly, I am a favorite student of my CI teachers. Beyond different appearances and personalities, my brain is wired differently from others. I was diagnosed with autism and other mental disabilities, but that does not limit who I am. Something that I do a little different than others is that I always have things on my mind. I worry about a lot of things like schedules, tests, finals, failing my finals, but there are other things in my mind that I have to face on a normal day basis like broccoli, bad weather, and most of all, the future. Dun, dun, dun. What about death? Is there such thing as reincarnation? So many questions at all at one time. It is too much, and it can be super overwhelming. To demonstrate how I feel in a way for you to see, I will invite my friend Anger from Inside Out. Hi, Anger. My brain looks like this. When I get upset, my first solution is taking a deep breath. Taking a deep breath is something natural for me after doing it for so many years. It also does wonders on making anger go away. Bye, anger. But there are other outlets I use, like swimming and stop motion video making. This is what I want to talk about today, and it all surrounds something that I want to share about myself. I am a virtuous, kind, and happy person who ignores all the bad words that my friends say. But most of all, I like to see everyone smiles. A smile can be the biggest difference in a person's day. Not to brag, but my smile has been said to be the best. See? But for real, a smile can make people happy, and it is a superpower. I try to make other people smile by making jokes or showing them my cool videos. And it was a superpower that I am here to help everyone unlock. It was how I found my happiness in the world of confusing communication. Let's start with stop motion video, not the kind on black and white video wheels, but on topics that I love. I started making stop motion videos in 2017. I saw them on YouTube and I wanted to do them by myself, but it didn't seem that hard. Ha 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 ha, I was wrong. But it was so worth it. Last time I made a Cuphead video. Cuphead is a fictional character who has a blaster gun to kill his enemies with his brother Mugman. I like Cuphead because he is a hero and likes to go on adventures. People online wrote great comments on my video about how cool my videos are, which made me feel proud. I also make these videos for my grandparents who live in South Korea. Even though they are far away, I don't get to see them often. We live in a world where we can connect with people far away. 안녕하세요, 부쇼신. 안녕하세요, 명수관. It started as an elective class I signed up for, but now it is a passion of mine. These stop motion videos are about making people happy and making them laugh. When I make these stop motion videos, I can imagine people watching my videos and almost see their smiles too. I wanted to get a lot of subscribers as a way of making people online and bring a little more joy, because a laugh and smile can set the tone for the rest of your day. Not only that, stop motion videos was how I would communicate to myself around me, because long conversations are hard and boring, but I can talk hours about Cuphead, Super Mario Bros., Wii, Lego Star Wars, and Pink Panther. And now often with my videos, people can understand and see my passion in a way more than a conversation. The second outlet I have found to help control myself and being happiness is swimming. I have been swimming for more than 10 years. And Milton, when you are ready, we can race. But for me, swimming is not the same experience as others. When I am swimming in the pool, I think about the Inspector show from Pink Panther, and I am chasing my opponents like the Inspector chases the bad guys. But instead of a bad guy, I was breaking my records. Without swimming, it would have been a lot harder for me to find what makes me happy. I think swim practice helps me physically because it makes my body stronger and healthier. But more importantly, mentally, it refreshes my brain, provides me a break time, working too hard at school, and gives me something else in life to focus on. I want to point out that swimming is not my whole life. With the Special Olympics, Northern California, I win prizes, maybe a medal or 2 or 5. It is not a big deal, even though they are first place gold medals. But it isn't about being a gold medalist. Swimming helps me clear my mind. It makes me happy because I can be present in the moment. Focusing on right now, looking back at this. This is what I've been swimming for a long time. When I was younger, I started swimming because it was something my mom made me do. But now I see that she was really just looking out for me because it is a great way to relieve stress. Year after year, I never got tired of it. I experienced what it was like to compete in the summer games. In 2018, athletes went to UC Davis to race with their friends and to win an Olympic medal. It was a pretty awesome experience because everyone learned new skills like sleeping in the dorms and eating cafeteria with my whole team. Beyond the swimming skills, I also learned how to build independent skills, teamwork, and explore new adventures, like trying to eat a different kind of vegetable, not broccoli. This is my swimming story and how I learned to be happy with myself. There will always be more races, but it is about what you learn from the sport and its experiences that makes a difference in life. This is why I swim. This is how it helps me in life. So no matter how I react to my problems, I try to be kind to myself and not get mad from the negative emotions. I also try to find happiness and show it to others. With a smile or laughter, my outlets have taught me how I feel, who I am, and how to express that to others. So I'm here not to tell everyone that happiness only comes from wearing a smile, exercising more, and becoming a super stop motion creator. Because sorry, that job is already taken. I'm just kidding. I'm here to tell everyone that actions speak louder than words. As everyone who knows the difficulties with expressing myself to others, the outlets you have in life and what you've chosen to take away from them help how we connect with others. Find what makes you happy, even if it takes a lot of experiments. I will tell you that baseball is not my best friend. So be the happiness you want to see in the world, because there will always be someone who needs to see a smile. Happiness comes from within, and for me, it helps to have a sleeping dungeon, aka also known as a bottom bunk bed with curtains. Thank you.
Thank you, Edison. Not just for your words, but for being my brother, the absolute biggest influence in my life, but also for smiling and never being afraid to show the world your happiness. This concludes TEDxYouth at McKinley Park. I'd like to take this moment and thank everyone who has helped this journey from the very beginning until now. Thank you to the audience, for the ones watching this and educating yourselves on the first experience of others, for my wonderful team who honestly puts up with my bothering and so much more, and I couldn't be able to thank them in enough words. Thank you to my family for constantly supporting me. Thank you, Mom, for being the one to ask me, how do you actually hold a TEDx event? And for invoking the experience from that very moment. Thank you to our sponsors who've been able to make this available to everyone watching. But also, I'd like to take this moment and thank Sacramento for being the diverse community that it's allowed me to embrace, and also for letting this event be a small scope of what you can share. This event does not stop here. Please, in your communities, be the ones to share your own experiences. Be the ones to help others understand something without the confrontation, the misunderstandings, and the miscommunications. Just be open. Try to be a little bit more open-minded and try to be a little bit more open when talking to people. Now, for those of you who've stuck around this far, A, I'm proud of you, but B, you get the wonderful pleasure of seeing all the behind footage and pictures that we've accumulated through this entire over 1 month process of filming. From us to you. Thank you!